Hello, I'm continuing my reviews on the Terminator series with Terminator Genisys. Now, Genisys is the fifth film in the Terminator franchise. Now, the film is directed by Alan Taylor, who before this directed Thor: The Dark World, and the film is actually co-written by Patrick Lussier. Now, Patrick Lussier also directed movies like Dracula 2000 and The Prophecy 3, and he directed the 2009 remake of My Bloody Valentine, and he directed the movie Drive Angry with Nicolas Cage, and he also edited a lot of Wes Craven's movies like New Nightmare and Scream. Now, the plot of the movie is it begins where it's almost like a prequel to the first movie. Like, you realize that in the year 1997, Skynet started a nuclear war which pretty much ended human civilization as we knew it, and ever since then, the survivors of the nuclear war have been at war with the machines. So John Connor ended up leading a human resistance against the machines, and they ended up beating Skynet. So to get back at him, Skynet ended up sending a cyborg back in time to the year 1984 to kill his mother, Sarah Connor. So John Connor ends up sending Kyle Reese back in time to protect Sarah. So the movie begins almost like a prequel to the first movie, but then when Kyle Reese goes back in time, he realizes that Sarah already knows about the Terminators and already knows about Skynet. Basically, this movie tries doing what J.J. Abrams did with his Star Trek reboots. Basically, the movie is set in an alternate Terminator universe. Like, somehow the timeline got screwed up, and basically this movie is set in an alternate Terminator timeline. Like, it turns out that a T-1000 was sent back in time to when Sarah Connor was 9 years old and tried to kill her when she was a little girl, and it killed her parents. And it turns out a T-800 was also sent back in time to protect her, and it turns out that this T-800 has been raising Sarah Connor. So in the year 1984, when Kyle Reese goes back in time, it turns out that Sarah Connor and the T-800 were actually expecting Kyle Reese. And it turns out that the T-800 actually built a time machine, and at first they're planning on going to the year 1997, which is when Judgment Day was originally supposed to happen, but somehow Kyle Reese finds out that the timeline got all changed up, so it turns out that now Judgment Day is actually going to happen in the year 2017, so they end up going to that year, and in the year 2017, there's this computer app called Genisys, which everybody is trying to download onto their computers and iPhones and iPads and stuff like that, and it turns out that when Genisys gets downloaded, it will be the end of the world pretty much. It turns out that Genisys is actually Skynet, and that's really all I want to say about the plot line of the movie. I feel like I've already given too much away, but then again, the trailers for this movie already gave so much away about the plot of this movie. Like, that's one thing I want to say about this movie. The trailers for this movie were fucking awful. Like, the trailers for this movie really did give away half the film, and there's a certain thing that happens in this movie that I'm not gonna say in this video. You probably already know what I'm talking about, but it could have been a really interesting plot twist in the movie, but it's all over the trailers. I'm not gonna say what it is, but if you've seen the trailers, you probably know already what I'm talking about. It kinda breaks my heart to say this, but Terminator Genisys is probably the worst film in the franchise, and I kinda hate to say that because I am a fan of this franchise, and I didn't hate the movie, and honestly, I don't think any of the Terminator movies, even this one, I don't think any of them outright suck, but this is by far the weakest installment of this whole franchise. Like, it really is. Like, I'll admit, when I saw the movie in the theaters, I was entertained by it, like, I enjoyed it, but it's one of those movies that, even though I enjoyed it when watching it, as I stopped to think about the movie, this movie has a lot of freaking problems. Now, one of this movie's biggest problems for me is really the unnecessary humor. This is kind of like Terminator 3. Terminator 3 also had a lot of comedy in it that really was unnecessary and really did kind of drag that movie down. It's kind of the same thing with this movie. In fact, this movie almost comes off as being almost like a lighthearted comedy. Like, there's a lot of humor in this movie, and I'm sorry, the humor, it really doesn't work, and it's really, really unnecessary. Like, there's a scene in this movie where Sarah Connor, Kyle Reese, and the T-800 end up getting arrested, and I shit you not, in that scene, they start playing the song Bad Boys. I'm not fucking joking, that's actually in this fucking movie. Now, in the movie, Courtney plays Kyle Reese, and a lot of people said he gave a really bad performance in this movie. Here's the thing. If he was playing anybody else besides Kyle Reese, I would say it's actually not a bad performance. Like, I actually don't think he's a bad actor, but he is not Kyle Reese. Like, there is absolutely nothing about his performance in this movie that is even remotely similar to Michael Biehn's performance in the original film. Like, there are absolutely no similarities whatsoever between the Kyle Reese of this movie and the Kyle Reese of the original film. Like, as far as I'm concerned, this really is not Kyle Reese. Like, there is nothing in his mannerisms or his speech patterns or anything that even remotely resembles Kyle Reese in the original film. And really, if it wasn't for the fact that he's called Kyle Reese in this movie, I would almost say it's a completely different character. And I would honestly say the same thing about the woman who plays Sarah Connor in this movie. There's really nothing about her performance in this movie that is even remotely like Linda Hamilton's performance in the first two movies. And in this movie, the whole point of Sarah Connor in this movie is that she's basically supposed to be the Sarah Connor that we saw in the second movie, only in the timeline of the first movie, because you realize that this version of Sarah Connor knew about the Terminators since she was a little kid, and in the movie they do kinda try to make the actress look a little bit like Linda Hamilton did, at least in the first movie, but is she... Once again, there's nothing about her performance in this movie that is even remotely like Linda Hamilton's performance. Now, in the film, Arnold Schwarzenegger reprises his role as the Terminator, and he is good in this movie. He's honestly probably the best thing about this movie, and you could tell that he is having a lot of fun in this movie, and you could tell that he really does love playing this character, so he is definitely the best part of this movie. And in the movie, I will say that him and Sarah Connor, they do actually have some pretty good chemistry with each other. Like, in the movie, they have kind of like a father-daughter kind of relationship, because you realize that the T-800 has been raising Sarah Connor since she was 9 years old, and in the movie she even calls him Pops, and they actually do have some good chemistry with each other. The problem is, though, Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese have absolutely zero chemistry with each other. Now, in the movie, Jason Clarke plays John Connor. Jason Clarke was also in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and I actually liked him as John Connor in this movie. I thought he did a pretty decent job. Now, J.K. Simmons has a small role in this movie, and I have to say that he's probably the second best thing about this movie. I actually did really like his character in the movie. Like, Terminator Genisys, it really is just a bland, mediocre, generic action movie, in my opinion. It's nowhere near as good as the first two movies, or even 3 and 4. 3 and 4 definitely have their problems, but I would say that 3 and 4 are even better than this one. Like, this really is the weakest Terminator movie, in my opinion. And it could have been so much better, because I actually do like the premise of this movie. The whole concept of the movie, setting it in an alternate Terminator universe, I actually kind of like that idea. Like, I think it could have actually made a really good movie. Unfortunately, it didn't. I think the filmmakers behind this movie, they had a good idea, they just really kind of fucked it up, in my opinion. Now, despite my problems, though, I didn't hate this movie. I really didn't. It just wasn't that good. Once again, it's a bland, mediocre action movie, and it could have been so much better. Now, apparently they're also planning on making 2 sequels to this movie. Like, this is supposed to be the first film of a planned trilogy, but I don't know if we're gonna get sequels to this, because this film, it's really not doing too well in the box office right now, so who knows if we'll see another Terminator movie. Well, I think we're definitely going to see another Terminator movie somewhere in the future, but I don't know if the next Terminator movie is going to be a sequel to this one. So yeah, that's my review on Terminator Genisys, and this is the last of my Terminator reviews. So, to go through the whole series, the first 2 Terminator movies are both absolutely revolutionary films of their genre, and if you're a science fiction fan, both Terminator 1 and 2 are almost mandatory films to see. Even if you're not a science fiction fan, but if you're just a film fan in general, they're both, like, must-see movies. Terminator 3 and 4 are both alright for what they are, but they definitely don't hold a candle to the first 2 movies, and this movie is mediocre at best. And I haven't seen enough of the TV show to really give a fair opinion of it, but in general, though, I am a fan of the Terminator franchise. So yeah, that's my review on Terminator 5, and bye.